Hello and welcome to 1 Hour SaaS. My name is Mubashir Iqbal, everybody calls me Mubs, and I am building a SaaS business in just 1 hour a day. I'm working on something called Podcast Ping, which is uptime monitoring built specifically for podcasters. This is update for hour number 17, and today I continue the work from yesterday, setting up the checks, and basically just went through and implemented one of the checks, which is the check for the RSS feed to see if we can access the RSS feed. What kind of response code are we getting? Are we getting a response from the server that we're expecting? Sort of that kind of stuff. And yeah, so I got that working. We did introduce a few new bits and bobs. So I decided to try at the beginning to use the actual built-in Laravel HTTP client, see if we can get all the information that we need out of that in terms of the actual status codes and kind of everything. And if we can, it looks like it's got a good wrapper, and you can kind of pass in options to the underlying libraries and things like that as well. So I think that's going to work for us for this particular check and probably others as well. I did also use a new library here that's introduced to the project called Laravel Enum, which is also from the Spathy guys. And this is just for us to be able to define the status of a check or the status of a health check. And there'll be other statuses that we want to track with this as well. So I just wanted to introduce that. And then yeah, I think that was about the only new stuff that I did. So basically the sort of checks stayed the same. We kind of loop through and we run the checks, and then there's a class for each check. And then so the class here this is the one for checking the actual RSS feed itself. And you can see here we kind of track how long the actual check took. But we actually just fetch the RSS feed URL, we get the response and the status code, and then we build up the sort of log of that particular check. So here we're just kind of logging what kind of check we were running, what podcast it's for, how long it ran, and then we throw the status code in there as well. And then we kind of have to, this kind of a very simple state machine in terms of understanding the status of a particular thing. So this RSS feed check, for example, it could be in an unhealthy state, it could be in a healthy state, and then we want to transition from healthy to unhealthy based on where it was the last time we checked. And so I did have a kind of a warning state. So if something's healthy, we try and fetch it once, and if that fails, we put it into this kind of a warning state. We haven't actually sent a notification or anything like that, but we don't want to just like on one error just kind of send like out an alert, because there's lots of things that could go wrong that don't necessarily mean that the thing is offline. So we kind of put it into this warning state, and then if we check it again and it's in the warning state, then we put it into the unhealthy state, and we would send the notifications and sort of that kind of stuff. And I think I did actually get this bit wrong. So we actually want to send the notification if it's in the warning state. So that was just something that I just noticed looking at the code. And then obviously if it failed, then we kind of do the reverse. If it's healthy, we don't actually... Oh, sorry, no. I was looking at the wrong bit. So this is, if it's unhealthy, then we want to send the notification, say that it's recovered. If it's in the warning state, then we just flip it back to the healthy state and we're all good. And if this is the first time we're checking it, we don't know if it's healthy or unhealthy. So if we don't have a status for it, we're just going to stick it into the healthy state. And then so the reverse is, if we're in the healthy state, we're going to move it into the warning state. If we're in the warning state, we're going to move it to the unhealthy state, and we send a notification to the user. And if we don't have a status, then I guess we're going to send a notification as well. Because, well, I guess in this case, we want to move it to the warning state, don't we? and we don't send a notification yet if it failed the first time we tried. If it's already unhealthy, then we don't do anything. We don't want to keep sending emails and things like that. So that was about all I got done today, but understanding the sort of logic and stuff, it's now that we've got it in place for this one, I'm going to try and abstract this out a little bit so that we don't have to have this same kind of complex, heavy logic in all of the checks that we have. But that may also be the easiest way to do it, since we don't really know what each check will actually need in terms of its kind of health statuses and stuff. I might look into, I mean, this is a very simple state machine. If we get more complex in terms of states and things, then we may want to introduce kind of a more of a state machine class as well, but I think this should be sufficient for us. So yeah, just to kind of show you the databases. So these are the checks that have been running. So we're kind of logging which podcast we were running the check for, what kind of check it was, the location that we're running the check from, whether it passed or failed, how long it took to run, which things were running pretty quickly on my machine locally here. So it says it basically took less than 1 millisecond to actually run the check, is what it's saying. We don't have the response time yet. I'll see if that's interesting or not. We can try and figure that out. And then this is the response code that we got. So we can kind of see if that's helpful. I mean, in this case, it's just the status code. So it might be good to know if you got a 401 versus a 403 versus a 404. It might help you figure out why your service is offline. So just including that in the email that we send out might be helpful. So, and that's just that one check. Obviously, other checks will have other information as well. And then for the actual podcast themselves, we kind of now have this kind of healthy flag or unhealthy flag if something is offline. So I can just I just put in a bad URL here. So that's why we're getting the 404 error. And if I go back here and run the check now, it was unhealthy. And if I refresh this now, it should now say it's healthy because it was able to access that. And the check will have a new check here that says it passed, and we got a status code of 200. So that's working. Tomorrow I'm going to focus on the sending of the email and sending of the alerts that we're going to want to do for each of the checks. Probably have a standard format for all of those, and we'll just swap out the actual statuses that changed and what the actual check was that failed as well. We'll see about, I'm not going to do it yet, but we'll see about trying to group some stuff together. So if we're trying to do 3 or 4 checks for a podcast, do we wait till they're all done and then try and send one email which has all of them in there? Or do we send individual emails for each of the checks? I don't know yet. We'll try and figure that bit out. But yeah, so that's it for today, and that's a good plan for tomorrow, I think. We'll probably just start, like I said, simple. Just each check that fails, we'll send an email. It gets complicated in terms of, especially on the recovery side, things might get really more complicated because like some things might recover and some things might not. So, how do you kind of separate out which ones failed and succeeded and things like that? Having separate emails also allows people to react to those. Like you can set up rules inside of your email client that can do different things depending on kind of what the status codes and things that come through is as well. So having individual emails, I think, might make that easier. So we'll kind of leave it like that. If it becomes a problem, we can always try and tackle that in the future. But I think it's going to be simpler to build. So let's just keep it like that. That's it. So see you next time. Thanks for watching.